Lonely librarian discovers 10 amazing love letters from a secret billionaire. A touching journey. Emma kept her head down, her fingers gently brushing over the faded spines of books that had been silent for too long. The Maplewood Library was her sanctuary, a space where the whispers of the past offered her solace from the world outside. Yet today, as rain slapped pathetically against the windows, the library felt too still, too confining. The isolation coiled tightly around her, accentuating her unease as she sorted through neglected archives in a dusty corner. It was there that she stumbled upon the ornate box, hidden behind an avalanche of old novels. A curious thrill shot through her veins as she pried it open. Inside lay 10 exquisite love letters penned by a man named James Whitmore. Her heart stuttered when she began to read his declarations of profound love forged a connection deep within her. But as she absorbed his words, a tightening knot of anxiety twisted in her stomach. What was she doing fascinated by a man long forgotten, one whose wealth had roused disdain in her own town? The town's whispers echoed in her mind, a billionaire? Who could possibly care? The voices surrounded her, hostile and judgmental. Emma hesitated, the weight of their scorn heavy on her shoulders. At that moment, she was suddenly thrust back to her family's struggles. Her father's health was teetering on the brink, and her mother's relentless dreams of a successful daughter only amplified Emma's own self-doubt. The letters resonated with her. James spoke of a love that transcended wealth, yet she couldn't help but feel ashamed. She wasn't even sure if she should care about his struggles. In flattering her imagination, the letters demanded that she confront her own life's constraints, exposing the fractures in her ambitions. What if she uncovered more about him, about the woman who inspired such devotion? But if she pursued this path, wouldn't that make her an object of ridicule? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Emma's mind raced. She longed to unearth more secrets, but dread clouded her thoughts. The townsfolk would scoff, they had no love for James Whitmore. They believed his gold only served to divide them deeper into their own struggles. If they knew she was chasing dreams that felt indulgent, what would they think of her? Her breaths quickened, the air grew stale as frustration bubbled in her chest. If James could endure the scorn, why couldn't she? Suddenly, she felt fiercely protective of the love story these letters offered. Torn between two worlds, the looming expectations of her family's aspirations and the relentless gaze of her judgmental community, Emma remained caught in turmoil. Would seeking the truth about James bring her the validation and enlightenment she desperately craved? Or would it seal her fate beneath a shroud of ridicule and shame? As she scribbled down notes about his life, preparing to reveal his voice to a world that seemed repelled by it, a haunting suspicion crept in. What if James's final letter held secrets that could fracture the perception of wealth and hardship in Maplewood forever? The tension built, an unbearable weight patiently waiting to uncover the truth. Emma's heart pounded like a relentless drum as she faced this pivotal moment, knowing one revelation could alter everything she'd ever known. Emma stood frozen, her fingers still clutching the last letter she had unearthed from the ornate box as the rain drummed a relentless symphony against the library windows. The sanctuary that usually comforted her now felt like a prison, its walls closing in as doubt gnawed at her resolve. What was she to do with this newfound treasure that felt both reckless and intoxicating? With bagged thoughts circling her mind, she pulled out her notebook, letting the scratch of pencil against paper distract her from the heavy weight of scrutiny she felt from her surroundings. And there it was, the question that kept her up at night. Was she destined to remain just the librarian, the girl who never left small-town Maplewood, or could she transcend the mundane and carve a unique path of her own? As daylight dimmed, shadows danced manically across the room. The thought of James Whitmore or what remained of him through the words on the pages beckoned a flame of curiosity within her. What if he had shared these letters not just for a lover's eyes but as a testament to something larger, something that could empower and inspire? But whispers filled her head, the community's disdain forming a chorus of what-ifs. A mix of anger and motivation stirred in her. How could she let society dictate her explorative journey? If James had the courage to spread his affection across the silence of time and wealth, then perhaps it was time for her to confront her fears. Each letter was like a mirror reflecting her own aspirations and fears back at her. The bravado in his words prompted her to reconsider the boundaries she had constructed around her life. Emma found herself searching for information about James. The rabbit hole ran deep, tethering her to the stories of his life, its trials, and how he had waded through the scorn of his own community. She instinctively knew that digging into his history would demand a vulnerability she hardly felt ready for. Could she legitimately dedicate herself to exploring the man who had nearly become a ghost in Maplewood's narrative? That night, engulfed in the cacophony of raindrops, she felt a resolve settle within her. She would write not merely as a librarian cataloging a past love story but as a woman setting forth to weave a narrative that countered her own fears. She would research not just for herself but for the invisible connections that might exist between her and James. The following week, as she stepped into the library, her pulse quickened at the thought of fresh exploration. She focused on the materials she had gathered, letters, articles, interviews, everything she could find about James's life. As the days passed, she felt the boundaries around her existence slowly begin to erode. With every piece of information, a new layer of confidence solidified beneath the surface, yet, as she delved deeper into his world, shadows of doubt crept in. Was this truly her path, or was she merely living in the fantasies ignited by a man she had never met? Emma faced a personal dilemma: would her pursuit of James grant her strength, or would it only lead her further down a path of isolation? A confrontation with her own bravado loomed ahead. Then one evening, in a particularly fraught moment, she found a final letter addressed to someone she'd never heard of before, a name that sent jolts of curiosity racing through her. With shaking hands, she began to read the revelation hidden within its floral script. The truth it unveiled shone like a lighthouse amidst her emotional storm, setting her mind ablaze with a myriad of possibilities. What kind of revelation waited within those words? The moment she realized she held the key to an unexpected destiny lurking in the shadows, the gravity of her decision weighed heavily upon her. Would exploring this hidden connection bring her into alliance with her dreams, or unravel the very core of her identity? Emma braced herself, accepting that the time had come to face the truth, one that could reshape everything she thought she knew. As Emma read the letter, the words flowed over her like fresh rainwater soaking into parched earth. The revelation echoed in her mind, each sentence lining the walls of her resolve. The person addressed in the letter wasn't merely a stranger, they were a pivotal part of James Whitmore's narrative, a narrative she had so earnestly begun to unravel. Who was this person, and what role did they play in both James's life and her own? This question twirled and looped in her consciousness, refusing to settle as she wrestled with the implications of the discovery. It was one thing to delve into a preserved love story, but it was an entirely different beast to confront the ghosts and truths that lay buried beneath his words. With a sigh that released some of the tension suffocating her thoughts, Emma flipped through the pages of her notebook, scanning her hastily scribbled notes on James's life. The facets of his persona began to shimmer like the surface of a river under sunlight. He was not merely a romantic figure adrift in the past, he was an architect of dreams and disappointments, a man who faced adversity with a determination she longed to emulate. Her heart raced as she recognized the connection lacing their stories together, two individuals caught in the crosshairs of societal judgment, both yearning for liberation. The next day at the library felt charged. The air hummed with potential as Emma prepared for the journey ahead. She had decided to seek out the person referenced in James's final letter, this mysterious figure who might hold the missing pieces of her puzzle. Who knew what doors could open as she set her sights on uncharted territory? Preparing herself mentally, Emma drew in a steadying breath. The thought of approaching a stranger was daunting, yet it also ignited a flicker of excitement. She had never asked anyone for help before, but she understood that stepping outside of her comfort zone was essential. The woman she wanted to be wouldn't back down. Her confidence strengthened with every step across the library floor. Determination danced in her chest as she rummaged through community records, reaching for the threads of history. Connecting the dots was invigorating. She became engrossed in details, and the excitement of discovery surged through her. It wasn't just about James anymore, it was about crafting her own story, one woven from the strands of another's reality. As hours melded into days, the obsession with revelations transformed her identity. Emma was no longer solely a librarian, she was an investigator, a seeker of truths. The depth of new knowledge gifted her clarity about her aspirations and talents. The librarian was becoming not just a vessel for information but an active participant in the saga of discovery. Days turned into hazy nights of research, and soon the name inscribed in James's letter evolved from mere ink on paper to a beacon of hope. Emma collected the fragments of history, intrigued by the elusive identity of James's confidant. Who they were or where they lived remained a mystery, but the journey to find out felt like a pilgrimage to self-actualization. But then, darting into her mind, shadows of doubt shifted to the forefront. Doubtful whispers unfurled around her. Was this pursuit worth it? Would she find herself entangled in heartbreak instead of discovery? The fear of losing everything she had come to build in her mental landscape gripped her. With a heart heavy yet pulsating with the vigor of a new quest, Emma fashioned a list of questions. Each one branded with the resolve to uncover the truth. She knew the time had come to confront the gatekeeper of James's secrets. Determined, she picked up her phone, fingers hovering over the contact she had doggedly scoured through community records, the name lingering in the kanji of a forgotten letter, a final remnant of James's world. The air grew thick with expectation as she prepared to dial the number. Little did she know, this call would alter not only her understanding of James but also reshape her future in ways she couldn't yet fathom. Would she emerge stronger, or find herself diving into a whirlpool of chaos, spiraling toward the unknown? The moment of her call approached, and with it, the question lingered. Was she ready for whatever lay on the other end? Emma steadied her breath, her heart thundering in her chest as the phone rang. Each ring echoed the uncertainty that was flooding her mind. What if she found the answers she desperately sought, but at the cost of other truths she wasn't prepared to handle? On the fourth ring, a voice answered. It was a warm, slightly raspy tone that disarmed her apprehension. Hello? Hi, my name is Emma Parker. I'm calling regarding a letter I found written by James Whitmore. The words spilled out before she could second-guess herself. There was a pause, and Emma could almost hear the wheels turning on the other end. James, you say? It's been a long time since anyone mentioned his name. What did you uncover? Her pulse quickened. The weight of his legacy felt heavier now that she was entangled in it. I found a letter addressed to someone named Grace Harrison. I believe she was significant in his life. I'm trying to piece together some parts of his story. James's story is complicated. Grace was important to him, yes, the voice interrupted gently, but the truth about their relationship isn't what many think. Are you ready to hear it? Each syllable pulled Emma deeper into the mystery surrounding James. There was vulnerability in her thrust into the unknown, but she sensed this was necessary for her own growth. Yes, I'm ready. As the conversation unfolded, Emma was drawn into a realm of past loves, hidden sacrifices, and a history defined by struggles both personal and societal. Grace, as it turned out, had been a fierce spirit who had fought for her own identity against oppressive expectations, much like Emma had desired for herself. In those revelations, the shimmering reflection of her own aspirations began to sharpen, but then came the piercing truth. James had not merely wrangled with ghosts of unfulfilled expectations, he had also wrestled with demons of regret, choosing not to confront certain choices in his life. Each regret was a fork in the road that had led him into a deeper labyrinth of longing and despair. Emma felt an uncomfortable familiarity with this narrative. She too hesitated at the intersections of her own life's decisions. What are you hoping to find, Emma? Grace's voice felt probing yet compassionate, inviting Emma to confront the very heart of her quest. In this moment of introspection, Emma grappled with her own desires. I want to understand how James navigated his life and to learn from his experiences. I don't want my path defined by others or ruled by fear. Grace's laughter was soft, almost nostalgic. Then you must be willing to stand firm in your truths even when they're uncomfortable. That's the only way to create your narrative. The weight of this insight settled like a mantle over her shoulders. Emma felt invigorated, and yet her doubt lurked, threatening to unravel the resolve she had begun to forge. She could see the danger that came with confronting buried histories and faceless fears. The freedom she sought demanded the dismantling of the barriers she had erected around herself. Will you help me understand more about James? About what he lost? Emma asked, feeling her dreams expanding with each breath. Only if you're ready for the depths of that pain, Grace replied, and Emma could feel the gravity of those words. Emma nodded, resolute in her decision. I am. With that declaration, she realized she stood on the precipice of transformation. She was no longer merely an observer of James's story but an author of her own. Each piece of information shared would shape the course of her life, echoing through her choices. As their conversation wound down, Emma found herself asking, what do I need to do next? I'll share everything I know, but be prepared to confront your own truths. Only then will you truly understand what drives you, Grace answered, her tone threading the anticipation of what was to come. Emma felt the flames of determination flicker to life. She was ready to immerse herself in this journey, not just to uncover James's legacy, but to reforge her own. As they exchanged details, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. What other layers awaited her? What new sacrifices might her pursuit demand? She could sense the tension tightening once more, the grasp of uncertainty threatening to ensnare her. With the call drawing to a close, Emma pressed Grace for one last piece of wisdom. What should I fear as I embark on this? Fear can be a catalyst, but also a cage. Grace's words hung in the air, igniting Emma's imagination. It will remind you that your journey is vital. Embrace it. The call ended, leaving Emma alone with her vignettes of history and newfound courage. Yet, the remnants of doubt cast shadows in her mind. The looming question hovered, was she prepared for the revelations to come? And with that thought, the labyrinth of her existence twisted anew, urging her toward the next chapter of her journey, one that might contain truths as beautiful as they were bittersweet. What awaited her in that darkness, and would she step forward unflinchingly into her own cavernous unknown? As the evening settled around her, Emma leaned against the desk, the phone still warm in her hand. Grace's words danced in her mind, fear as both a catalyst and a cage. An unsettling thrill coursed through her veins, a mixture of exhilaration and dread. Determined to dig deeper into the life of James Whitmore, she flipped open her laptop, the screen illuminating her face in the dim light of her tiny apartment. She began searching archives for anything tied to his name. The weight of a forgotten legacy fueled her resolve. It felt as if he were gradually pulling her into his world, inviting her to peel back the layers of his existence. Hours slipped away unnoticed as Emma navigated through a web of articles, historical records, and old photographs. Each finding revealed a piece of James, a man who had once been full of hopes but had allowed shadows of regret to creep into his choices. The stark contrasts between his dreams and his reality struck a profound chord within her. She recognized the familiar gnawing unease that had stifled her own aspirations. It wasn't until she stumbled upon an article about a charity gala he had hosted, a lone mention of his philanthropic inclinations, that something shifted. The image of him standing alongside dignitaries, a broad smile on his face, unsettled her with a sense of vulnerability. Beneath his poised exterior, had he experienced the same isolation she felt? Beneath the surface of his public facade, was there a longing for connection, for purpose? With each word she read, Emma began questioning the narratives she had woven about herself. The introspection sparked a spark of defiance against the self-imposed restraint she had carried. Perhaps she was not just the woman relegated to the shadows of her career, a librarian seeking stability, but a capable individual poised for growth and discovery. The next day, Emma made a spontaneous decision. Instead of reverting to her safe routine at the library, she visited the local bookstore, their hours aligned with the deepening intrigue surrounding James. She could no longer shy away from her yearning to truly connect with people, to share her own voice amidst documents, manuscripts, and stories. Walking through the tall aisles, she felt the comforting presence of stories that awaited discovery. Choosing an unabridged anthology of letters that spoke of yearning, joy, and heartbreak, she flipped through the pages, feeling their potential ignite within her. Purchasing it, Emma felt invigorated, a newfound commitment blooming in her chest. The looming question of her own emotional barriers urged her onward. Each letter she read further invoked the depth of human connection, encapsulating love in its beautiful complexity. Perhaps this practice of expression was exactly what she needed to cultivate her own narrative. As days passed, she immersed herself in the letters, guided by the rawness of vulnerability they encapsulated. Inspired, she began to write her letters as if her own soul was pouring out onto the page. They became her inner dialogues, a glimpse into her regrets, desires, and dreams. Each word resonated with the permission to explore her truths, to confront the personal labyrinth she had been wandering, but in the depths of her literary journey arose questions that demanded answers. Could she truly embrace the revelations of her desires? Could she weave her life's tapestry not just from words, but also from bold action? Further complicating her journey, Emma received yet another email from Grace, shrouded in ambiguity. "The past has a way of catching up with us," it read, echoing her own internal conflict. A knot formed in her stomach. What new challenges lay beneath the surface? With ink still fresh on her letters, Emma contemplated her next move. The warmth of her essays contrasted sharply with the tightening grip of anxiety around her heart. This moment felt pivotal, a crossroad demanding a courageous leap into the unknown. Emma, her reflection in the mirror whispered, "Are you ready to confront what lies ahead? To step beyond the edges of your carefully crafted comfort zone?" Her heart thundered as she clenched the edges of the desk, grappling with the anxiety threading its way through her resolve. One truth hovered in her mind, casting a shadow over her burgeoning courage. It wasn't just James Whitmore's legacy she was unraveling, it was also her own. That stillness, with the promise of transformation looming at the edges, Emma realized the time had come to confront the specters of her past, to embrace the words of both the letters she read and the truths she was beginning to write. What awaited her on this uncharted path? Would she dare to face the echoes of mistakes and regrets, both hers and James's, and, ultimately, forge her own narrative from this vibrant chaos? The dawn light poured through the thin curtains of Emma's apartment, casting delicate patterns on her desk. She felt an urgency that demanded her attention as she sat surrounded by scraps of paper dotted with her thoughts, letters filled with vulnerabilities she was only beginning to understand. As the morning unfolded, she sensed the previously dormant embers of her ambition spark into a quiet flame. Sitting cross-legged on her floor, she flipped open her laptop once more, ready to confront the ambiguities that still clouded her mind. The fresh message from Grace lingered, each word potent with unsaid implications. What could the past mean for her present? The question echoed in her thoughts, a haunting melody she was determined to decode. Emma decided that to truly grapple with what haunted her, she must seek context. What better way to connect her life with James Whitmore's than to attend the charity gala to which he had once dedicated his efforts? The idea blossomed within her, unfolding like a flower under the sun. Perhaps attending could unravel threads of her own unease and bolster her burgeoning resilience. The notion terrified her just as much as it exhilarated her. Rather than allowing fear to immobilize her, she chose to wield it as fuel. Within hours, Emma had secured an invitation. The sense of accomplishment propelled her from her solitude into the hustle of her small town. As she marched down the streets, the bustling world around her was both foreign and familiar, a lexicon of possibilities written in the imaginations of strangers. She found herself peering into shop windows, contemplating life stories hidden behind glass, wondering how many harbored dreams yet to be realized. With each step toward the gala, she mentally rehearsed her intentions. It would be the first time she stepped outside the librarian's cocoon of comfort. The glitter of crystal chandeliers and elegant chatter awaited. She envisioned herself not merely as an observer but as a participant eager to carve out a piece of her own narrative within the lingering shadows of others. However, a nagging threat of failure wove itself into her thoughts. What if the aura of the event drowned her? What if she felt more out of place than uplifted? Yet, those doubts were increasingly overshadowed by a current of determination. She had come too far, knitting together the strands of her yearning. She couldn't back down now. On the night of the gala, she donned a simple yet elegant dress, one that reflected understated confidence. As she prepared, she caught a glimpse of herself, no longer just Emma the librarian but Emma the seeker, poised for revelation. The vulnerability of stepping into a sea of unfamiliar faces electrified her spirit, turning fear into a palpable excitement. Upon entering the venue, her breath caught in her throat at the grandeur surrounding her. Inspirations hung in the air, stories intertwined and unresolved, much like her own. She pledged to connect, to listen, and to share her own aspirations. It was time to weave her voice into the chorus of others. As the evening unfolded, she engaged in casual conversations with strangers, sharing her insights about the letters that had kindled her passion. And each time she spoke, a piece of the wall guarding her heart seemed to crumble. For the first time, Emma felt the rich tapestry of human experience envelop her, as heartfelt exchanges blossomed into sincere connections. But just as she began to revel in this newfound joy, a familiar figure emerged from the crowd, an elderly woman whose piercing gaze held an unspoken truth. Emma's heart raced as memories flooded back, echoes of another life intertwined with James's legacy. This woman, once part of the societal fabric woven by the charity gala, held an intimate understanding of the past. Emma sensed the walls closing in, and the realization dawned on her this was the moment she needed to confront the specters of her past, both personal and entwined with the legacy of James Whitmore. Would she gather the courage to engage? Would this encounter reveal the answers she sought or plunge her deeper into uncertainty? As she approached the woman, the weight of potential confrontation hung thick in the air. The electric promise of transformation crackled at the very edges of the moment. What revelations awaited her in this intersection of past and present? Emma took a breath, ready to delve deeper into the complexities of her personal odyssey. The air shimmered with anticipation as Emma stepped closer to the elderly woman, the familiar lines of her face triggering a cascade of memories, snippets of laughter and quiet conversations in forgotten corners of time. The woman's deep-set eyes, flecked with wisdom, held a flicker of recognition, as if she too had unearthed long-buried sentiments. "Emma," she said, her voice soft yet commanding, slicing through the cacophony of the gala. "You've grown, but I still see the girl who once shared secrets in the library." The warmth of her words wrapped around Emma like a comforting blanket, but beneath it pulsed a current of unresolved tension. "Mrs. Devereux," Emma breathed, her heart pounding. She had revered this woman as a local matriarch, a keeper of stories and traditions, yet the shadow of past grievances loomed large. A misstep in her childhood had turned admiration into shame, a shame that had lingered long after the echoes of laughter had faded. "Your letters," Emma ventured, her voice steadier than she felt, "the ones about James. They've sparked something in me. I want to understand." Mrs. Devereux's gaze intensified, revealing the depth of her own pain. The letters were not just words, Emma. They were the crux of life lived amid choices both reasonable and foolish. The truth of her statement washed over Emma, making her acutely aware of the responsibility that came with the understanding of legacies, her own included. "But how do I hold them? How do I step forward when all I've known is to retreat?" "By confronting your fear directly." James did not leave this world with regrets, he took the leap, even when the ground beneath him shifted, Mrs. Devereux replied, her voice steady, urging Emma to anchor herself amidst her internal storm. A moment of silence stretched between them, charged with the weight of shared history and vulnerability. Emma felt the jagged edge of her insecurities gnawing at her resolve. She could paint a picture of herself as a woman ready to embrace change, yet the specter of her past, the disappointments, the nagging belief in her inadequacy threatened to unravel that image. Pushing back against the tide of her doubts, she asked, "What if I fail? What if my attempts to connect only amplify my solitude?" "Then you learn and try again." Solitude can either suffocate you or teach you to cherish the moments when you do connect. It is your choice how to wield that solitude, Mrs. Devereux said, her words resonating deeply, crafting a bridge between Emma's past and the potential of her future. Emerging from the secluded space of their conversation, Emma looked around. The gala, bustling with laughter and joy, now seemed to glow differently, inviting her to partake in a life steeped in profound connections. She took a deep breath, fortified by Mrs. Devereux's perspective. Just as she began to turn to the crowd, the elderly woman's hand grasped hers, strong and assured. Remember, Emma, every letter you write, every word you speak, has the power to change your course. Your authentic voice awaits its moment. Emma's heart raced as the stakes surged. She realized this was her moment to reclaim more than just her identity. It was a chance to rewrite her narrative, to forge something bold out of vulnerability. But what lay beyond Mrs. Devereux's wisdom? What secrets remained in the folds of the past yet to be unearthed? As the years of silence whispered promises, she turned with renewed determination, ready to engage the world that had once felt so foreign. Then she saw him across the room, an unexpected figure, someone whose presence drew her in like a compass to true north. A flash of recognition ignited, and she felt the pull of unresolved questions and bitter regrets. Would she muster the courage to approach him, to untangle the web of her past before it engulfed her once again? The choice was hers, and the stakes had never been higher. Emma's gaze locked onto the familiar face, her pulse quickening as memories cascaded over her like a flood. Nathaniel. The boy she once admired from afar, the one who had filled her heart with unsaid words and unacknowledged longing. He was no longer the shy boy she had known. He had transformed into an imposing figure, exuding an air of success and confidence that starkly contrasted with her own feelings of inadequacy. As he scanned the crowd, his eyes landed on her, and a breath caught in her throat. Here was the embodiment of her past, a reminder of unfulfilled dreams and the aches of missed opportunities. She felt painfully exposed under his scrutiny, suddenly aware of the many years spent erasing the past, fostering a veneer of nonchalance that had worn thin. Summoning her courage, she took a tentative step forward, each footfall echoing the battle waging within. The air thickened around her, heavy with the weight of what could be an apology, a confession, a rekindling of an unscripted script. Mustering the mantra Mrs. Devereux had imparted, Emma chided herself, embracing the moment as a first tentative step forward. Confront your fear directly. Emma, Nathaniel said, a hint of surprise painting his features as he approached. It was as if they were two wayward travelers rediscovering a long-forgotten path. I didn't expect to see you here. Neither did I, Emma replied, striving for a facade of ease, though her body betrayed her with an anxious fidget. You look well. Thanks, he said, faltering slightly as he processed the reality of their reunion. You've changed too. The silence stretched between them, two uncharted spaces filled with everything unsaid. Emma's mind swirled, a cacophony of second guesses and flailing hopes. He was a mirror reflecting her past insecurities, the moments when she had retreated from who she was, who she might have become. Nate, she said, surprising herself with the ease that flowed from her lips, I've been thinking about us, rather about all that's unsaid. To be honest, I've thought about that too, he interjected, uncertainty lacing his tone. We were kids, Emma. We didn't know what we were doing. His admission struck her as both a relief and a challenge. He was acknowledging their shared history, but using the childish naivete as a shield against the vulnerability she craved to explore. It wasn't just childhood, though, was it? Emma pressed, her voice suddenly firm as the edges of doubt began to blur. There was more than just innocence in our silence. His brow furrowed momentarily, and she could see the internal struggle reflected in his eyes. Their formative years had not just been shared but intertwined, an unraveling that would require brutish honesty. This was the time for confrontation, both of their pasts and their personal demons. I never meant to hurt you, he finally said, the weight of his words anchoring them both. The sincerity in his eyes ignited a flicker of hope. I was just afraid. Fear seems to be a recurring theme in our lives, she replied, feeling the sting of tears prick her eyes. How often had fear silenced her voice? How often had it muted her growth? In this electric moment, she realized that more than Nathaniel needed to confront old shadows, so did she. But we are not those children anymore, are we? No, we're not, he admitted, determination merging with vulnerability in his eyes. What if this was a pivotal moment, a chance to rewrite their own stories together? Emma felt a pang of resolve, a daring genesis where old narratives could intertwine with new possibilities. Before she could speak again, his gaze faltered, darting toward someone else in the crowd. Confusion mixed with clarity as Nathaniel's expression hardened. Emma, wait. I need to, but she sensed the shifting tides, imagined the weight of a storm brewing just beneath the surface. Amidst the rekindled emotions, another figure, an embodiment of her past choices, loomed behind Nathaniel, challenging everything that had just begun to emerge from the shadows. Emma's heart raced, battling between facing her ghosts and allowing herself to embrace newfound connections. The moment was fragile, threading between a potential reunion and the threat of old wounds reopening. Would she find the strength to continue confronting her past, or would fear once again impose its reign? A chill ran through Emma as she turned to see who was approaching, each step resonating with the memories she had tried so hard to bury. The figure behind Nathaniel was none other than Owen, her former boss, the man whose ambitions had clashed with her own dreams. As he strode forward, the confidence he exuded reminded her of the career paths she had left unattended. Emma, Owen called out, his voice rich with a blend of familiarity and authority. She felt an involuntary tension in her shoulders. Nathaniel's gaze was still on her, but Owen's arrival shifted the focus, presenting a new dilemma. Just a moment. Nathaniel spoke, his tone both protective and urgent. Emma could sense the friction in the air, as if reality was reminding them that confrontation often came masked as social interaction. She knew she had a choice to remain in the burgeoning openness with Nathaniel or to slip back into the familiarity of her past with Owen. "Hey, Owen. What are you doing here?" she managed to say, forcing a smile that felt brittle. "This place had a certain allure," he replied, his gaze flickering between her and Nathaniel. "But it seems your old connections have not faded away." His smile seemed benign at first, but Emma sensed a veiled challenge. Face to face with two men who represented two different aspects of her life, she was struck by the stark contrast between them. Nathaniel, who embodied her long-buried dreams and vulnerabilities, and Owen, who stood for her perceived failures and current obligations. She felt cornered, a chess piece caught between two opposing forces, both vying for her focus. "I should go," Nathaniel said, his voice laced with disappointment. The calmness that had filled the moment started to dissipate, and she was acutely aware of the opportunity she was about to lose. "Wait. Don't," Emma said, her voice stronger than she expected. The words fell into the slight silence that wrapped around them, unraveling something inside her that had been tightly bound by fear and doubt. "Let us not stop here. This moment is too important. We need to confront whatever this is." Owen's brow furrowed, surprise evident on his face. "Emma, I think it's best if you know," she interjected, her decision crystallizing. "You don't get to dictate the terms anymore." The firmness in her tone surprised even her, and she could feel an old version of herself disintegrating in the face of her new resolve. This was her life, and she had every right to shape it unapologetically. Nathaniel hesitated, his eyes widening as if seeing her for the first time. There was a new recognition in them, a shared understanding of what she had to overcome. "What do you want to say?" he asked gently, putting the power back in her hands. Emma inhaled deeply, the second stretching as she collected her thoughts. It was time to reveal not just her past but the vulnerabilities she once feared exposing. "I want to understand why we let fear define us, why I let myself be governed by it for so long. And why you, Owen, have always felt like a shadow looming over my choices." A quiet fell between them, a palpable weight softening the tensions. In that space, where control could shift, she recognized the power of her voice was rising stronger than ever. Owen started, but she cut him off. No, not just excuses. I need clarity. It's time to confront not just you both but myself too. With each word, she felt layers of silence and doubt falling away. Her heart pounded, not from fear but from an unfamiliar surge of agency. It was a decision point that could rewrite the narrative. In this fragile tension, Emma grasped that the unfolding of her story wouldn't be dictated by old fears or expectations. It was their turn to understand her decisions. As they stood before each other, a silent pact began to form. The evening had shifted into an unexpected confrontation, one that promised growth but also uncertainty. In that moment, a voice, the echo of Mrs. Devereux, resounded in her mind. Only in courage can you find yourself. What are you ready to confront in you? She challenged, eyes darting back and forth between the two men, knowing no answers would be easy but a pivotal conversation awaited. Emma could feel the fabric of both past and future tightening, a blend of hope and trepidation hammering at her resolve. And as the atmosphere thickened with unsaid revelations, she realized she had only scratched the surface of her own metamorphosis. Would she have the bravery to continue this confrontation, and more importantly, could she face the truth about her own choices? Emma stood between Nathaniel and Owen, the weight of her unresolved past heavy in the air. She could feel the tension surrounding them brimming with a mixture of fear and anticipation. It was time to redefine her narrative, to reclaim the power she had long relinquished. Nathaniel, I'm ready to explore the truths of our shared past, she spoke firmly, her voice steady despite the uncertainty coursing through her. Fear has held me captive for too long. I want to understand why we allowed it to dictate our choices. He regarded her with surprise, taking a step closer. I think we were both afraid of what the other might feel. The vulnerability we carried was overwhelming, and instead of confronting it, we drifted. His sincerity wrapped around her, offering connection where there had once been silence. You're not just a whisper from my past, Nathaniel, she continued, emboldened by her acknowledgement of personal growth, you're a piece of my potential. His eyes widened, likely struck by the new Emma, a woman stepping into her power. Turning to Owen, she felt the intensity shift. And you, Owen, have often stood as a reminder of shortcomings, her voice rising with conviction. Your expectations clipped my wings, but no longer can I allow remnants of insecurity to control my pursuits. Owen's facade began to crack, confusion and regret flickering behind his eyes. You held a position of authority in my career, but I won't let you overshadow my ambitions anymore. As she stood there, breathing deeply, Emma sensed something irrevocable shift within her. She was not just seeking answers from Nathaniel or Owen, she was crafting her own narrative anew. Each word peeled back layers of pain and uncertainty, revealing a robust sense of self that had been lying dormant. Emma, Nathaniel said softly, seeking her gaze. I remember moments at the library, the times we spent together reading. I never got to share how your passion inspired me to chase my dreams. His honesty struck a chord, and she felt barriers dissolve between them. Pushing through the vulnerability, she realized this moment wasn't merely about past heartaches, it was about redefining connections. It's time we stop letting regret shape our identities, Emma asserted. We are here now, and we all deserve second chances. Looking between the two men, she saw fragments of herself reflected in their gazes, the dreams deferred, the fears encountered and the unspoken emotions that had tethered them. I want to write my story, not just with letters on a page, but with every step I take towards confrontation and growth. Fear may lurk behind me, but my ambitions will guide me forward. Owen sighed deeply, as if the weight of her revelation weighed heavy on him too. I've been careless with my approach, Emma. I never intended to stifle you, I wanted to see you succeed. I've wrestled with my own fears of inadequacy. The sincerity in his admission offered a glimpse into the vulnerabilities they all shared, reifying her decision to embrace transparency. This moment, carved from shared experiences, held significance beyond mere words. It was a crossroads where paths converged, and understanding unfurled in the open. Emma felt the power surge within her, liberated from the constraints of societal judgment and her own insecurities. I am allowing myself to embrace this opportunity, to embrace each interaction, each emotion, and to learn from them, she articulated, her heart swelling with newfound confidence. Every choice leads to a narrative worth living. Silence settled among them, punctuated only by the gathering murmur of the gala around them. Emma had transformed, emerging from the cocoon of expectation into a woman claiming agency over her own life. "Let us write our chapters together," she suggested, a spark igniting in her chest. "There's so much potential in rekindling connections and redefining our truths together." A smile broke across Nathaniel's face, one that showed recognition, a belief in new beginnings. "I do like that, Emma," he replied, his tone warm, now a shared understanding lacing his words. With that, the three began to step away from the past, embarking on a journey of empathy and support. As they chatted and reconnected amidst the festivities, Emma knew that she had not only confronted the shadows of her past, but also forged bonds as strong as the aspirations she now dared to pursue. Standing in the heart of the gala, embracing each interaction filled with purpose, she marveled at the transformation she had undergone. What was once isolation had blossomed into human connection. Empowered as she decided to reshape her story, Emma felt satisfaction resonate through every cell of her being. She had emerged as the author of her own destiny. Now, her path lay before her, a canvas ripe for exploration, and she was filled with excitement over the unfolding chapters just waiting to be written. And as she held her head high among the tapestry of voices surrounding her, she realized she had conquered not only her fears but had achieved clarity and insight beyond her initial imagination. This was not the end, but merely the beginning of Emma Parker, an empowered librarian transformed into a brave seeker of her own story. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.